Hello everybody, the Nameless Narcissist here once again. Simple man diagnosed with MPD, giving you the facts on narcissistic personality disorder and the stuff that goes on in my head. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on social media and all that crap. Keep in mind I'm no clinician, so I can only speak to my own experiences. Well, and is evident in this video, the things I read as well. Anyways, so I decided I was going to make a video like this because I constantly see people, especially on TikTok, have these completely wrong conceptions of what makes narcissistic personality disorder, right? And every now and then they'll say something and I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar, but from a completely different disorder and often in different clusters, right? So I'm making this video to show you, hey, if this person isn't a narcissist and you're only judging it off of things like hoovering, love bombing, all those buzz terms, this list will probably give you a better idea of what it is because there's so many overlaps of personality disorders. So the first one that I see very often confused with, oh, also sorry, I have a space heater going on, so it's probably going to be like shitty audio, but whatever. The first one is obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I see this one confused very frequently because there's some similarities. There's perfectionism, there's a sense of self-righteousness, grandiosity in the sense of self-righteousness for OCPD, when for us it's more about the self, and very rigid views, especially on morality. So a big distinguishing factor is while people with OCPD can be kind of haughty about their work, it's very much limited to their work and not who they are as a person. I'm haughty and arrogant because I think I'm better than everybody else. People with OCPD think they're better at everybody, like at their job, basically. They're very highly perfectionistic. Well, I want to be the perfect person. They want to get their work perfect, right? And it can also be seen in these like very rigid moral views. I once knew somebody who was very high up on the spectrum for OCPD, and they were very, very hardcore environmentalists. And they were like, it was wild because for me, I can be like, I very deeply hold these views. I'm so dedicated to these things, but they aren't firmly held. It's mainly what I will basically have an opinion that makes me look the most smart and the most intelligent. Literally with movies, I literally don't even have opinions on any movie. I will just pick things out from the movie and just say whatever the fuck about it to make me sound like I know what I'm talking about. Look at me, I'm deep and smart, man. And also, a big thing is that both NP with OCPD can be super controlling. Like my mother's lover, she had OCPD. She would throw a fit if my mom literally changed a towel without consulting her first. Both can be very emotionally cold, very often, even at least, and they both have kind of a flat effect to them. But there's differences in cognition, how this presents. You're not going to see the attention-seeking in OCPD. You're not going to see all-pervasive grandiosity. You're just going to see things that can be confused with grandiosity. And also, not to mention, with those rigid values that let's say you do something wrong and then they do something in retaliation or whatever, it's not going to be self-justifying. It's just going to be them. Well, it can look like denial and blame shifting, whatever. Because people with OCPD, they genuinely believe whatever the fuck they're saying is like 100% true. Literally, I would try to disagree with this person on some of their points and environmentalism, whatever, I don't really care. But like they'd be like, oh, like the world's overpopulated. And I'd be like, well, with some advances in like food production and stuff like that, I don't think it's something that we particularly have to worry about, blah, 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 blah. And this person literally hit me. They literally were violent with me. What a bitch. Why was I even friends with her to begin with? Fuck. I'm not friends with her anymore. Good for me. Thank you, Lee Hammock, for getting rid of that person for me. That's a little joke. All right, another one. This is probably the second most common one I see confused with narcissistic personality disorder, paranoid personality disorder. So there is a certain amount of grandiosity in both of these disorders, but with paranoid personality disorder, it's way more self-righteous and self-justifying. They believe everybody's out to fucking get them, right? And this is all oversimplifications, of course, but it's like this sense of like, they'll look into your behaviors, be like, oh, they're trying to fuck with me. I need to get them back. It's not like this fear. I mean, there's fear involved in it, right? But it's way more of like, they need revenge. It's this vengefulness towards some perceived slights. And again, it can be very self-justifying when they do stuff, so you can see how that would be confused with NPD very often. But there isn't the characteristic, like, expressions of grandiosity. It's way more about these perceived slights as opposed to just who they are as people. And keep in mind, paranoid personality traits can present in transient psychotic episodes in NPD and BPD, and it's also an associated feature with malignant narcissism. And like people with NPD are not pervasively mistrustful. They can be mistrustful, but it's not like all the fucking time, right? Just sometimes when like, the only times that really happens is when we think somebody is envious of us. Like, it's like, oh, they want to take away our achievements because they're envious and stuff like that. People with paranoid personality disorder don't think people are envious. They just think the world is cruel, I guess. And when they have anger, it's not out of envy or exploitativeness. It's just like, okay, for example, one of the criteria, and this is also another thing that gets it confused a lot with NPD, is that they always are accusing their partner of cheating with them. It's literally a criteria, is that pervasively every day they're accusing them of cheating with them, and this can lead to like isolation of that partner because they don't trust anything that they do. They always think this person's trying to cheat on them. And people with NPD, we have a avoidant dismissive attachment style most of the time. For me, I'm like, she'll never fucking cheat on me. I'm the best she'll ever be able to do, and I just simply don't care. The person with paranoid, though, they are going to constantly suspect it. It's interesting. I once knew somebody with some of these traits, and he pervasivly would, like, I was friends with his girlfriend, and every fucking day he would accuse her of trying to cheat, her trying to cheat on him with me, and tell her that I was trying to get her to cheat on him, which is hilarious because I could have had her if I wanted. She had like a big thing for me for a long time, and he knew that. And he also knew that I thought she was ugly. So I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? I also ended up making him cry because when I learned about all the abusive bullshit he was doing and like isolating her and everything, he deserved it, whatever. Fuck that. All right, another one commonly confused is borderline personality disorder. So people with borderline personality disorder actually have high correlations with vulnerable narcissism. And I think that's why this can get confused so often. Like I'll hear like, oh my God, my boyfriend was a vulnerable narcissist. It's like, okay, so if he was a vulnerable narcissist, he had fucking borderline personality disorder. That's not narcissism. Because most of them can be very self-centered, right? But with borderline, it's a lot less about like, you know, a preoccupation with the self. It's more about regulating their emotions, getting their needs met. It's like being needy with their partners and stuff because they're constantly in fear of abandonment, right? So other people's emotions don't matter as much to them, but it's a very distinct kind of egocentrism. In NPD, there's just more stability. They can have longer periods of employment. They have less psychotic episodes that would involve transient paranoia and stuff like that. And the biggest thing for me is, again, it's the neediness versus the grandiosity. Like, people with BPD can have brief moments of grandiosity when they have their like BPD highs because they feel all their emotions so intensely. Occasionally they will have things that resemble hypomanic episodes. And so people with BPD are going to be, but that's not going to be all pervasive, and also they're going to be way more needy. They're going to be very preoccupied with their partner, while again, we have avoidant dismissive attachment styles most of the time. So you're going to see like, so it's going to be a lot less. They're going to be like, oh my God, please don't leave me, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to be like, you don't matter, what the fuck ever. I'll leave you if you try to leave me. And like, we do have also that fear of abandonment, but we aren't showing it as overtly. Antisocial, another one I see. Like, I feel like people see crimes being committed and they're like, that person's a narcissist. And it's like, okay, if you want to be stigmatizing, basically, if you want to pathologize crime, there's literally a disorder that does that. Because and I think this is a good time to point out, sadism is not an associated feature of any personality disorder or any disorder. Well, I'm not sure any disorder, but no personality disorder. So if you're asking like, oh, where does sadism fall in these? It doesn't. Sadism is a completely different personality factor that can apply to literally any personality type, disorder or otherwise. Sadism is just not associated with any personality disorder. So if you try to use that to justify like, oh, he was antisocial, oh, he was narcissistic, whatever, that's incorrect. So the big distinguisher in antisocial is grandiosity versus callousness. I'm going to be grandiose. I'm going to be haughty. I'm going to be like, and like people with antisocial also can show some grandiosity if they're factor one psychopaths, especially, but they genuinely believe in it, right? People with antisocial, they aren't going to need the affirmation that I do. And people with antisocial are going to be way more callous, way more cold. And which is, while my callousness is more of kind of a front, I mean, don't get me wrong, I am kind of callous, just not as much as somebody with antisocial. Antisocial people are more likely to be impulsive, to show aggression, and to deceive. This does tie into interpersonal exploitation, so I think now's a good time to point out. With antisocial, it's more commonly associated with sex or material gain, while with NPD, it's more about emotional regulation. We want to self-enhance. We want position. We might want some of the same goals, like let's say power, but for us, it's about our image. It's about prestige. For antisocial, it's more about the power itself or the material gain. And people with antisocial are way more likely to have no guilt or remorse. This can happen in NPD, but it's not a diagnostic feature, and it's not very commonly associated with NPD. It's just that with cluster B, the traits are all over the place, right? You'll probably have one predominantly, then you're going to have traits. Like I have NPD with antisocial and borderline traits. And that's going to be most people with personality disorder. It's actually kind of rare for people with personality disorders not to have another one comorbid. Addiction. This one I don't feel like I've spent much time on. People can exhibit narcissistic behaviors if they are an addict. But that's very limited to the substance itself, right? I'm going to be exploitative so I can get the means to my drugs. I'm going to be entitled to getting drugs, stuff like that. I think it's very easily distinguished. Histrionic personality disorder. So these get confused too. I mean, I don't think as often, but they both have those attention-seeking behaviors, so I thought it was worth touching on. While people with NPD can be haughty and cold and careless, people with HPD are way more like, they're like warm and playful. They're kind of like kids, more or less. And they have a capacity to be dependent on people. People with NPD are like, I don't fucking need anybody. It's this sense of I need to be independent. I need to rely on nobody. People with HPD don't give a fuck. They have more empathy. They have, like people with they have more empathy and like, again, warm feelings. People with NPD are going to be like controlled, calculated, and relentless. While people with HPD are just kind of impulsive and, again, playful, and they don't really have any ulterior motives. Bipolar, I felt like I had to touch on this one because I was confused with bipolar a couple times before I was diagnosed correctly twice. I want to point out, I've been diagnosed twice just because I don't actually, I'll get to that later. Bipolar. There is no active because like the hypomanic or manic episodes in bipolar can resemble some grandiose highs, and they also can, in bipolar, there is grandiosity when they're in like an up bipolar state. But in bipolar, you're not going to see them looking for attention. You're not going to see the profound envy. So, and the grandiosity is pervasive, and basically, no matter if I'm in a vulnerable or grandiose state, there's going to still be some grandiosity there either way. I might be special in my suffering or something like that, right? Everybody's out to get me. Everybody hates me, whatever. Schizoid, I'll touch on real quick. Schizoids, they have a capacity for empathy. They are emotionally cold, like people with NPD. I actually have a friend who has very strong schizoid traits, and I was wondering for a while, I was like, is he a narcissist too? And there is a latent grandiosity. They have like this secret, like very mild grandiosity, not nearly as pervasive in NPD. But it's not and another big thing is like, I mentioned in one of my videos, I have a really hard time identifying personality traits of my friends and like describing them in a full and fleshed out way. People with schizoid don't struggle with that. We both have like we can both have like an intellectual style to us. We can both like for me, it's a little bit more like a presentation. With schizoids, they do escape into this this fantasy world where they are very introspective, very, trying to think of other good words for it. Intellectual style is the only way I can describe it, honestly, and that tracks my personal experience and some of the things I've read. And people with schizoid, while I'm going to be haughty and arrogant, they're just going to be indifferent. And then I'm going to get to the ones that I see people suggest get confused with narcissism, but I honestly think these are the stupidest fucking people I've ever met in my life. ADHD, which the only real thing I can think of that is similar is sensation seeking. Like literally somebody on my TikTok was like, maybe you just have ADHD. I'm like, are you just an idiot? Like how fucking stupid could you be to think I'm confusing NPD with ADHD? I mean, I had both, right? And I guess there is that distractibility that can, make people with ADHD seem less attuned to your needs. But I don't think I have to explain to anybody here how fucking stupid that is. And then autism. Another one that people, what if you just have autism? Some dude was like, oh, like you wearing glasses, which, yeah, me wearing glasses is fucking, that's not the same as not having eye contact. And then info dumping, that means you might have autism. I'm like, do you think I go into my day-to-day just talking about narcissism all the time to my friends and shit? I literally don't. I barely ever bring this up unless it's relevant. It's like I'm fucking just info dumping for you ingrates so that you guys can actually learn something instead of sticking in your fucking constrained and stereotypical views of what narcissism is, but whatever. But yeah, I don't think I have to explain it to anybody here. Like, people with NPD aren't going to have struggle in social situations. They won't really struggle with eye contact unless, like, there's shame involved, more or less. They're both going to have that egocentric kind of thinking and stuff like that. But again, like, it's like, if you met me and then you met somebody who was autistic, you would know fucking immediately who was who. And I think this highlights the biggest issue with me trying to educate people on NPD is that people close themselves off to learning about this because, again, they have this very constrained view, this just box of what they imagine narcissism looks like, when one, all of us are different, and two, the box that they put us in probably isn't super accurate. Hell, I read a very good, I should link it, this woman wrote, who actually went, I'm going to announce that later, actually, Ella Romingstand, something like that. She wrote this pamphlet called MPD Basics, or MPD Basic, and it's like this presentation of how narcissistic people may present. And she notes that, like, some are going to be super arrogant, some are going to have, like, a cool attitude for them, some are openly grandiose, some know to, like, hide their grandiosity, some can, like, articulate their pathological tendencies super well, and some are completely oblivious. Some can, and like, which is hilarious because it's like you hear all these people being like, narcissists can't self-reflect. No, you're just stupid, basically. We're not animals, right? Some of us have a great capacity for self-reflection, some don't. That can apply to literally any person you've met in your life too. Think how many shitty people you know that have no pathology and never self-reflect. And in some cases, maybe never wrong. It's just people have a poor capacity for self-reflection in general until something happens in their life that forces them to self-reflect, or they just have an interest in it to begin with. Like, I've always been interested in how I function, why I do the things I do, and been just very curious about it my whole life. And also, I've just been frustrated with not the hell knowing why I do anything. But yeah, we all present differently. Like, the way that people get these things confused with narcissism is super damaging, especially if they are in a toxic relationship. Because imagine if you're trying to deal with somebody that has PPD, and then because everybody thinks narcissists only abuse, they try to handle the situation how they would a narcissist. And that would not go over well. Trust me. And this is also bad for clinicians because since these are so, people struggle to differentiate these things so much, then treatment options and the treatment process can just be super ineffectual. But yeah, that's I literally made this video because I kept getting pissed off at people on TikTok saying I don't have NPD. I don't get it often, but it's literally the only comment that still pisses me off nowadays. Idiots. Anyways, hope you all have a good day. Take your fucking meds.